Why is that? All over the world, people act as if they are deeply hurt, yet at the same time, they repeatedly hurt others themselves. And why is spirituality often used to avoid facing one's own vulnerability and sensitivity to being hurt? Here is the answer. Globally, people display a high sensitivity to being hurt and react strongly to emotional wounds, while simultaneously hurting others themselves. This paradox has several causes. On one hand, being hurt is a universal phenomenon closely linked to our self-esteem and emotional experiences. People who see themselves as vulnerable or who have inner insecurities tend to react especially sensitively to being hurt. At the same time, this insecurity often leads them consciously or unconsciously to hurt others as well, for example, to protect themselves, gain control, or compensate for their own weaknesses. Another aspect is that many people perceive their own sensitivity to being hurt as a weakness and therefore try to hide or suppress it. However, this does not lead to greater inner strength. In fact, it makes people even more susceptible to being hurt in the long run because their true feelings are not processed. In this context, spirituality is often used as a means to avoid confronting one's own vulnerability and sensitivity. This so-called spiritual bypassing describes the tendency to use spiritual concepts or practices as an escape from unpleasant feelings, old wounds, or unresolved conflicts. Instead of honestly dealing with their own emotions, people use spirituality to avoid them by, for example, seeing themselves as above it all or leaving their problems to the universe instead of taking responsibility. Ultimately, these dynamics arise from the attempt to avoid pain and protect one's self-image. However, true healing and stable relationships only become possible when people are willing to face their vulnerability and take responsibility for their own actions.